Jason Gelbo here with Chris Etherington, taking a look at DraftKings picks for the Puerto Rico Open. Not as an exciting field as we got, over the previous few weeks. Not as exciting as what we're going to get for, the next couple of weeks. But here we are. We got to break it down.
Yeah, this week is going to be very hard to pick your favorite players, especially when you're used to playing someone like Graham Dillette around $7,000 range. He's the second highest player this week. So with that being said, I think it's best if you're into the bankroll management, I would definitely cut it back a lot for this week. If you're just one of those casual players, it might be best just to skip this week and wait for next week when everyone is going to be tuning up for the Masters for the following week.
Yeah, I agree. Looking through this field, it's not particularly exciting. You get a lot of guys where maybe you find a couple that you like, but it seems like almost all these guys that are maybe not in the 10K range have some sort of red flag to them.
Yeah, it's just one of those weeks where you just know what the chalk is going to be. A lot of players are going to be playing, like, for example, Graham Dillette. A lot of players are going to play Ian Poulter as well. It's just either play those guys or maybe play the ownership angle and fade those, and maybe you might have an edge that way. But like I said, definitely just cut back on your exposure for the week.
Yeah, and looking at this one, as far as the tournament alone, we saw the winds become a real bad factor. 2015 it was. And it looks like the weather could be a bit of an issue too. It gives you even more reason to just maybe sit out this week.
Yeah, this course is it's on the coastline, and it's also very open. When the winds pick up, it looks like Thursday and Friday might be okay, but double check on Wednesday night just to see how it is. But if the winds do pick up on Thursday and Friday, then stacking tee times will be a good strategy for this week.
Yeah, and as far as the course goes, what are you looking for as kind of your key stats?
Yeah, so for the stats that I normally look for are my greens and regulation, the recent form, and also course history. The problem with course history is that you got a lot of guys in this field that don't have enough course history. So I'm just going to take that out and just look at scrambling for the week.
And as far as Dillette goes, he actually does have a course history here, but he seems to be the only one with, a fair amount of times playing here, 11th, 18th, 9th, and 24th. So it just gives him even more reason to kind of lock him in, it seems like, for a safer play.
Yeah, at the top, he's really the only guy that I like to play for this week. He is getting better around the greens. He's getting up and down about 60% of the time. And with his iron play, he's very consistent as well. When you look at his recent form, he only has one missed cut in his last 6, and he actually has 2 top 10s as well. So at the top, yeah, he's going to be popular, but I think out of all the guys up there, I think he's a safe play for the week.
What about Wesley Bryan? A couple strong outings. 3 top 10s in a row, 2 top 5s before the Arnold Palmer, where, obviously did not have a good round. Expensive, not a usual name that we see up there.
Yeah, normally Bryan is usually in the mid 7,000 range. He was less than 7,000 at the Honda, but with his recent form, he has 3 top 10s in his last 4 events. So it's going to be very hard to fade him for this week. But I think going balanced this week and not worrying about the guys in the cheaper range is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, looking at the field, we get into the 9K range where I know a guy that Ulysses is your first in your core, Luke List. Probably going to be fairly high in ownership as well.
Yeah, he's the that name that everyone that knows, that especially for players who have been playing um, a lot this year and last year as well. Um, Liz is right next to Scott Brown, who is basically the course horse for this week. He's going to be very popular, probably going to be the highest owned, I would guess. But for Liz, I mean, he's been hitting the greens just over 63%, pretty close to 64. Um, and he's about average, maybe just below average for scrambling. And then with his recent form, he made his last three cuts and he finished 17th last week. So, and he's actually trending upwards. And I think he's going to be somewhat popular, maybe might be overlooked, but I think he's going to be a fine core player for this week.
And know another guy that you like right at the same kind of price tag, Zanati at 9,500.
Yeah, Sonati is probably the best combination of the two stats that I'm looking for. For his scrambling, he's getting up and down 79% of the time. And then for hitting the greens, he's hitting at around 70% as well. And for his recent form, he won in Malaysia a couple of weeks ago, and he finished 12th at the WGC in Mexico a few weeks ago, and that was his last tournament. He's going to be that name that not everyone will know, and with Ian Poulter being right there, I think he's going to be overlooked for this week.
I mean, I kind of like Uline. The more I look into him, I mean, he's kind of shown some GPP upside here at the Euro, on the Euro Tour, but obviously kind of high risk, high reward for me. Do you see him as a pretty good pivot? I mean, he's probably going to be really low owned.
Yeah, exactly. He's sandwiched between McDowell and Luke Liss. Those two guys will be popular. Peter Hewline, we look at his history. He hasn't missed a cut in his last six starts, and he has two top tens. So that's a fourth and a fifth. Paying him at 10-1 is a little steep, but you're going to get a lot of that with a lot of these guys for this week. You just have to not look at the price and just look at their stats and their history and go from there.
It's weird because I mean, when you tend to look at Vegas odds and stuff, you don't really see Uline up there in a lot of pages, at least early on. You see a lot of McDowell, Dillette, Brian, Liss is kind of your guys that people are picking to win it, and usually that kind of ties into the salary, but Uline's kind of stands out there.
Yeah, Uline normally for betting odds, if I have to guess, he's probably at that 100-1 type of range usually for the year. But for this week, he's in the top 5 for the players to win it. So, I mean, Vegas is probably seeing something that he's probably one of the top players in the field, and that's why his odds are up there. But again, I think he's going to be one of those guys where maybe 1 or 2 in your lineups for this week, and that'll be it.
And as far as moving down the list here, I mean, you kind of skip over your article basically the entire 8,000 section, talk about 7,000 guys. In the 8,000 range, I mean, is there anyone that stands out? This is where I looked and I had a little bit of trouble with. I just felt like there was a lot of red flags with these guys.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, a lot of their recent forms are like miss 3 cuts in a row and then make a cut, but doesn't finish that high. Probably the 2 guys that I like that will be popular just because of name recognition would be JJ Spawn and Tyrone Von Asvegan. Spawn, hitting his greens okay right now, but he's getting up and down close to 60% of the time, which is really good. And he's been that cut maker that we're used to. We're used to paying him around 7,000. So when you look at his history, he has the two top tens, one in Phoenix and one at the Farmers. So he's a really consistent player. Same with Tyrone.
Yeah, and those are the guys that I'll be looking at. I mean, Spawn popped off one just because we've talked about him a few times on the pod here. Had a great start to the year. A guy I'm looking at, I mean, tournaments only, is Aznio Bozelli. Just kind of a boomer bust guy. I mean, when he gets the putter on, I mean, he can be actually a pretty good player.
Yeah, he's been popping up leaderboards every now and then. He's not accurate with his irons. He's barely hitting the greens over 50% of the time, but he is getting up and down close to 70% of the time. So those two kind of basically cross out each other in a way. When you look at his history, his recent form, 3 missed cuts in his last 5, but the 2 that he has made, he finished 3rd at the Feldspar and he finished 5th at the Career Builder. So it's literally what you said. It's going to be 50-50 on him, whether he's going to make the cut. If he does make the cut, he's probably going to finish in the top 10. And if he doesn't, he's going to miss the cut. So
yeah, I basically view the 8K range as just all kind of boomer bust options. I mean, you list a couple of guys that you don't mind here below that. First one, Rory Sabbatini. I mean, only 7,400, which one I think is a recognizable name, but also trending upwards, as you said.
Yeah, with his screen shot regulation is really solid. He's hitting them at 66%. He's getting up down 63% of the time. And then when you look at his recent form, he just had the 1 missed cut at the Honda. And then before that, he finished 14th at the Farmers, and he's been so-so for the rest of the tournaments of the year. So with that being said, I think Sabbatini might be one of those guys where it's going to be a fine play. I think he'll make the cut. No problem, depending on the weather, obviously. But with that, I think he's just going to be a fine play for the week.
I do as well. I mean, he was probably a guy who was a staple probably most of my lineups just because he's on the cheaper side. Nick Taylor, 7,200 is a guy that you mentioned in your article as well. You need like a Canadian section because I just seem like the 4th guy is always a Canadian guy.
I try not to do that, obviously, but it's kind of hard not to when a lot of the Canadians are playing well. Obviously, you have Hadwin for a couple weeks in a row there, and then Graham Dillette has been on the leaderboards for a while, and Nick Taylor, who's been on tour for maybe 2 years, I think. He's just getting his game into form. He's been hitting his greens at close to 63% of the time, and he's a good scrambler. He's getting up and down pretty close to 60% as well. So with that and his recent form, he only has 1 missed cut at the Phoenix this year, and he finished 10th at the Pebble Beach. So I think at 7,200, he's going to be a fine play for the week.
Yeah, and 5th here last year. And, looking through just 1-year core in general, I mean, is this how you're kind of looking to build, basically get 2 guys in the 7K range and try and make up in the 9s?
Yeah, it's definitely a balanced approach for me. I really don't have anyone that I like in the 6,000 range. So I'm just going to use the 4 players that I like as my core and then rotate them in the 4 lineups that I'm playing for the week and maybe pick 6, maybe 6 more golfers that I like. And that's it for me for this week.
Yeah, it's definitely a much smaller field of play for you, I noticed, in terms of your exposure. I mean, you talked about for one already cutting back, but, obviously you're not locking in 30 guys like previous weeks and building around them.
Yeah, I'm used to doing the multi-entry, like say the quarter arcade, where I'm making the max entry 50 lineups and then picking 20 to 30 golfers for that week. But for this week, there's not that many good tournaments on DraftKings, mainly because of the type of field that's playing this week. So with that being said, I'm just gonna focus on the 3 entry max tournaments and the single entry tournaments, and just pick the 4 guys that I like and maybe pick 6 more as the rest for my player pool.
Yeah, really limited this week. If you want to check out Chris's article and his core, you can head on over to fantasycafe.com. Also be aware, as the weather kind of gets closer, we're still only Monday, so be sure to check that out. What weather site do you use to really look at it?
For me personally, I like to search the city that the players are playing in on the weather network. And then on Wednesday night, it will show you the winds for Thursday morning all the way to Friday afternoon. So that will give you a clear understanding if you want to stack tee times on either side for the week.
And generally, early morning is going to be a bit better in comparison to when they pick up in the afternoon.
In theory, with the winds being down in the morning, normally that is the case. But again, just double check Wednesday night to see if there's a big difference between Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon. That will give you a clear understanding on what to do for the week.
Yeah, and be sure to keep an eye on the weekend as far as rain as well. And like I said, if you do want to check out Chris's article, you can head over to fantasycafe.com, and I'll see you guys next week.